solution. Under ordinary circumstances, Ellis would have said no, but Percy had just killed his brother. Malcolm Milwright had been an evil, abusive asshole, but they had been blood relatives. Thus, Ellis, who had almost lost her brother recently, was treating Percy gently. For the time being, anyway. She was now nervous, however. They had a meeting scheduled in slightly under a week between Senator Chan and 4 Drow elders. It would only be a meet and greet, during which they would drink mushroom tea, eat tacos, and exchange pleasantries, but it was an important first step in improving relationships between humans and the Drow. If they'd had to capture all the spiders, she would have gone behind Percy's back with a flamethrower, but he'd insisted they could clear the place by removing the breeding females. The boys can live out their natural lives peacefully, like spider monks, he said. The arachnids weren't very long-lived, and without a way to reproduce, they'd soon be gone. Percy got the spider up and moving, and they walked it to a holding crate by the elevator, moving in silence down the sleek white halls. Ellis now lived here, but she wasn't sure she'd ever feel at ease. "We should paint the walls," she stated. "The beige gives me the creeps." There were also several places where the paint was stained with spider guts and human or drow blood. "We could do it up in orange and green stripes," Percy offered enthusiastically, drawing inspiration from his current outfit. Ellis tried to keep her expression neutral, but inwardly she cringed. Should she ask why Percy was wearing his dead brother's green paisley lab coat? Not a conventional choice for morning wear. At least he'd washed it, and carefully darned the hole through which he'd driven a drow dagger into his brother's back. Grief was strange, and if Percy wanted to express his through questionable fashion choices, so be it. If there was one thing the DRI had had in abundance, it was cages. It was creepy, but they'd come in handy during Operation Pied Spider Piper. Percy coaxed the cave spiders to the back of the cage, and Ellis slid the door almost shut. When Percy released the moonsteel loop and withdrew the pole, she slammed it closed. The metal latch clicked an instant before the spiders slammed into the grate. Ellis grinned. "To the truck!" Percy nodded cheerfully and helped her load the cage onto a dolly and into the elevator. Ellis checked her watch as she pushed the button for the parking garage. It was 2:30 in the morning, so no one was in the building except the night watchman. Ellis shivered. Arden Chan had insisted that several former DRI soldiers stay on to guard the facility. Ellis hadn't wanted to keep any of them since, in her mind, they had all been complicit in the DRI's horrifying experiments on drow subjects. She didn't even trust Charlie. He'd gone back to his job at the LAPD. He had promised he'd help if she needed him, but they hadn't seen much of each other. Senator Chan hadn't budged about the former DRI soldiers, so Ellis nodded coldly at a young man with a rifle who met them when the elevator doors opened onto the parking garage. "Last one for the day." Ellis stepped aside as Percy steered the dolly toward the waiting moving truck. 3 spiders were already inside. Ellis gently took the dolly from Percy, preparing to lever it up the ramp. She dug her feet in and pushed the squealing spider up, then jumped as a face appeared in the gap between 2 of the spider cages in the truck. "What the hell?" she shouted, jumping into fight mode. Then she recognized the face. "Hector? You're not supposed to be here." His grin was wide, although his eyes were wary. He pushed his chestnut curls back from his face, looking entirely too cheerful for a man surrounded by murderous spiders. "What's going on, Ellis?" Percy hopped back and forth behind Ellis, struggling to shout over her shoulder as the spiders hissed, talons clanging on the metal. "Get out of there, son! You'll spook the girls!" Hector looked confused, so Ellis went around to the front of the truck and pulled him out through the driver's door. "Hey, I was enjoying myself," Hector protested. Hector was a horror movie enthusiast who had worked in special effects before he had been sucked into a day job as the facilities manager at the Bromeliad. He still harbored affection for all things creepy, and the spiders definitely counted. Percy smiled indulgently at the younger man. Not many people shared his enthusiasm for the 8-legged monstrosities. "You should be screaming or running away."